In the isolated country house, Max, Anna's therapy dog, a deaf girl, growled furiously at the new caregiver, leading her parents to decide to give him away. But as they reviewed the cameras before his departure, they discovered the true danger the woman posed to the child. Max's guttural growl still echoed in the tense silence of the room. Laura, Anna's mother, held the dog by his leash, her heart pounding erratically. Her eyes, usually full of affection for Max, now reflected a mixture of shock and disappointment. Ricardo, the father, was pale, trying to calm Sophia, the caregiver, who trembled slightly, her hand on her chest. I don't know what happened," Sophia stammered, her voice a little choked. "He's never done this before. I just went to get Anna's toy." Max, restrained by Laura, continued to stare at Sophia with an unsettling intensity, a slight tremor running through his body. He didn't seem aggressive in the sense of wanting to attack again, but rather desperate, as if trying to convey an urgent message. Anna, sitting on the floor, oblivious to the commotion due to her deafness, played with her blocks, occasionally looking up at the tension in the air, sensing the vibration in the environment. "Max, stop!" Laura whispered, pulling him away. Tears began to form in her eyes. "Ricardo, this can't continue. He's never been like this. Never." Ricardo sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know, Laura, I know, but we can't risk it. Anna is our priority. A therapy dog cannot be unpredictable. Not with her." The decision, though painful, seemed inevitable. Max, Anna's loyal companion since he was a puppy, the dog who had learned to communicate with her through touches and signals, would be given away. The thought of separating him from Anna broke Laura's heart, but the fear of an attack, of a bite, was greater. "We'll take him to my sister's house tomorrow," Ricardo said, his voice hoarse. "She's always wanted a dog and has a huge yard. He'll be well cared for there." Laura merely nodded, unable to speak. She hugged Max tightly, feeling the dog's furry head against her shoulder. Max, in turn, licked her face, then looked at Anna, who was now observing them with curiosity. Later, while Anna slept and Sophia was in her room, Laura and Ricardo sat in the living room, the weight of the decision crushing them. Ricardo, still restless, stood up. "I need to see the recordings," he said, more to himself than to Laura. "Just to understand, to make sure we didn't miss anything. Max, he's a good dog. He's always been so protective." Laura hesitated. "Ricardo, this will only make us suffer more. The decision is made." "I know," he insisted, "but I need closure. I need to see what made him react like that. Maybe he was sick or something scared him." With a resigned sigh, Laura agreed. Ricardo turned on the monitor, displaying images from the security cameras installed at strategic points in the house. They rewound to the moment Sophia had arrived, and Max had begun to show signs of agitation. The images showed Sophia entering the living room, smiling at Anna. Max was lying at the girl's feet, initially calm. But then, as Sophia moved around the room, her eyes began to drift from Anna to the decorative objects. She stopped near a small antique dresser, where Laura kept some family jewelry in a carved wooden box. Sophia picked up the box, admiring it for a moment. Max, who had only been observing before, began to growl softly, a sound almost inaudible in the recording, but which the parents now recognized. Sophia, distracted by the box, put it back, but not before her fingers slipped to a small gold ring that lay beside it. She quickly hid it in her palm as she bent down to pick up one of Anna's toys. It was at that instant, as she bent down, that her elbow inadvertently brushed against the button of a portable gas heater that was on standby near the wall. A soft click, almost imperceptible, could be heard in the recording, followed by a subtle, almost inaudible hiss. Sophia didn't notice, or if she did, she ignored it, focused on concealing the ring. Max, however, reacted with renewed fury. He jumped, barking and growling, desperately trying to draw attention to the invisible danger the woman had just created. Laura and Ricardo watched the scene in silence, their eyes wide, the ring, the click, the hiss. And Max's desperate reaction. The air in the room seemed thin. It wasn't aggression. It was a warning. A silent, deadly danger had just been unleashed, and Max's instinct was the only thing standing between Anna and imminent tragedy. The air in the room, previously only thin with tension, now felt suffocating. Laura and Ricardo were paralyzed, their eyes fixed on the screen, where Sophia's image bent down, her elbow brushing the heater, the click and hiss almost inaudible, but now deafening in their minds. The ring, the theft, all that was secondary. The gas. "No, it can't be," Laura whispered, her voice a mere thread. Her eyes widened, fixing on the small portable heater in the recording. "Ricardo, the gas." Ricardo didn't answer immediately. He was pale, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. His eyes shifted from the screen to the corner of the room where the actual heater stood. He stood up abruptly, swaying slightly, and rushed to the appliance. "It's on!" he gasped, his voice hoarse, pointing to the button that was now clearly in the on position, not standby. A subtle smell, almost imperceptible before, began to infiltrate the air. A sweet, nauseating smell that he now identified as gas. "My God, Laura, it's leaking! She turned it on!" Laura stood up, her heart pounding erratically in her chest. The scene replayed in her mind. Max growling, barking, desperate. It wasn't aggression. It was a warning. A cry for help they had ignored, interpreted in the worst possible way. "Max," she murmured, tears streaming down her face. "He was trying to warn us. He was trying to save us." Guilt hit her with the force of a punch. They were going to give away their loyal dog, their protector, due to a catastrophic misunderstanding. And meanwhile, Anna. "Anna!" Ricardo exclaimed, panic seizing his voice. He ran to the hallway towards their daughter's room. Her room! The gas might be reaching there. Laura followed him, her legs trembling. Every step was torture, every breath agony. The country house, which had once been a safe haven, now felt like a deadly trap. The silence of the night, previously comforting, was now filled with the phantom hiss of gas and the deafening sound of their own panic. They reached Anna's room. The door was ajar. Ricardo gently pushed it open, revealing Anna's small figure, deeply asleep in her bed, a teddy bear clutched to her chest. The sight of her, so innocent and vulnerable, made Laura's heart ache. Anna wouldn't hear the hiss, wouldn't smell the gas until it was too late. Her deafness, which they always strove to protect, now made her even more defenseless. "She's sleeping," Laura whispered, her voice choked. "We need to get her out of here. Now." The smell of gas was stronger in the hallway, but in Anna's room it seemed less intense, perhaps because the door wasn't fully closed and the air circulated a bit. Still, the danger was real, imminent. "What about Sophia?" Ricardo asked, his voice low and tense, looking towards the caregiver's room at the end of the hallway. The door was closed. Laura shook her head. "It doesn't matter now. Ina is the priority. First Anna, then we'll deal with the rest." Ricardo's gaze hardened. Anger began to replace panic, but he contained it. The priority was clear. He approached Anna's bed carefully, reaching out to pick her up. "Max," Laura said, suddenly remembering the dog. He was in the living room alone, still under the weight of his guilt. The injustice of the situation was overwhelming. "He needs to come with us." He was right. Ricardo nodded, not taking his eyes off Anna. "Yes, he comes." He was always right. As Ricardo carefully picked Anna up in his arms, Laura rushed back to the living room. Max was lying on the rug, his head low, looking desolate. Seeing Laura, he raised his head, his eyes sad. "Max, my love." Laura knelt, hugging him tightly. "Forgive me, we were so stupid. You're a hero." Max licked her face, a low whine escaping his throat. He seemed to understand. He stood up, looking towards the hallway, as if he knew the danger was still there. "Let's go," Laura said, pulling him by the leash. "We need to get out of here." They moved quickly, but as silently as possible. Ricardo, with Anna asleep in his arms, and Laura with Max by her side, headed for the front door. Every creak of the floor, every shadow, seemed to amplify the invisible danger surrounding them. The house, once a sanctuary, was now a labyrinth of silent threats, and the woman who was supposed to protect them slept peacefully, oblivious to the chaos she had unleashed. The living room clock read 2:37 a.m. The night was far from over. Ricardo, with Anna asleep in his arms, felt the weight of responsibility and panic. The smell of gas, previously subtle, now seemed to envelop every corner of the house, making breathing difficult. He looked at Laura, who held Max by the leash, her eyes teary, but with a newfound determination. "We need to get out of here now," Ricardo whispered, his voice hoarse, his eyes sweeping the room, searching for any sign of immediate danger, any spark. The fear of an explosion was real, palpable. Laura nodded, pulling Max close. The dog, previously desolate, now seemed alert, his senses sharpened to the danger the parents finally recognized. He sniffed the air, a slight whine escaping his throat, as if confirming the urgency of the situation. They moved in silence, each step echoing in the quiet of the early morning. Ricardo, with Anna nestled on his shoulder, opened the front door with the utmost care, avoiding any creaks. The cold night air rushed into the room, bringing momentary relief from the suffocating smell of gas. Once they were outside, on the porch, Ricardo took a deep breath of the pure, cold air. Laura, with Max by her side, looked back at the dark house. The living room lights were still on, casting a faint glow through the windows, a scene that seemed deceptively calm. "Where do we go?" Laura asked, her voice trembling, hugging Max tightly. The dog, in turn, leaned his head against her leg, a silent comfort amidst the chaos. "To the car," Ricardo replied, already moving towards the vehicle parked in the open garage, a few meters from the house. "We'll call emergency services from there, and the police." They got into the car, Ricardo carefully placing Anna in the back seat, still asleep, oblivious to everything. Laura sat beside her, Max snuggling at her feet. Ricardo, his heart still pounding erratically, started the car. As Ricardo called emergency services, his voice tense and hurried, Laura looked at the house. The image of Sophia sleeping in her room, completely unaware of the danger she herself had created and of the tragedy Max had averted, filled her with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Gas leak," Ricardo said into the phone, his voice echoing in the silence of the car. "Yes, at the country house. My daughter is here with us, but the caregiver. She's inside. We don't know if she's realized." The guilt of having doubted Max, of having planned to give him away, weighed heavily on Laura. She stroked the dog's head, tears now flowing freely. "You're our angel, Max," she whispered, her voice choked. "You saved us. You saved Anna." Max licked her hand, his brown eyes fixed on her, as if he understood every word. He wasn't just a therapy dog. He was a guardian, a silent hero. The siren of a police car and, soon after, that of a fire truck began to be heard in the distance, breaking the quiet of the night. The flashing lights rapidly approached, illuminating the dirt road leading to the house. Ricardo hung up the phone, his face pale, but with a look of relief. "They're coming. They'll take care of everything." Laura looked at the house again, now illuminated by the approaching emergency lights. The figure of Sophia, sleeping peacefully in her room, was a disturbing image. She had stolen a ring, but inadvertently, had almost stolen Anna's life. And Max, the dog they were going to give away, had been the only one to see the danger, the only one to try to warn them. The immediate emergency was being controlled, but the consequences of what had happened, the betrayal, the theft, and the near tragedy, were only beginning to unfold. The country house, once a haven of peace, would never be the same, and the trust they placed in people and even in their own judgments had been irrevocably shaken. The emergency lights swept through the darkness of the night, transforming the house's facade into a stage of dancing shadows. The first police car stopped abruptly, followed closely by a fire truck whose sirens finally fell silent, leaving a persistent hum in the air. Ricardo and Laura got out of the car, Anna still asleep in Ricardo's arms, while Laura held Max tightly. A police officer approached, his face serious under the flickering light. "Sir, ma'am, is everything all right? We received a call about a gas leak." "Yes, it's serious," Ricardo replied, his voice choked with tension and cold. "My daughter is fine, but the caregiver, Sophia, is inside. She must be unconscious from the gas, and there's more." Laura intervened. Anger and pain mixed in her tone. "We saw everything. We have the security camera recordings. She caused the leak while trying to steal jewelry. Max, our dog, tried to warn us." The officer's eyes widened slightly, absorbing the complexity of the situation. He signaled to the firefighters, who were already equipping themselves with masks and oxygen tanks. "Understood. First, we'll ensure everyone's safety and neutralize the leak. Then, we'll investigate the rest." The firefighters, with quick, coordinated movements, broke down the front door, which Ricardo had only left ajar. A nearly imperceptible cloud of smoke, but with the unmistakable smell of gas, escaped into the night. In a few minutes, a team of 2 firefighters entered the house, while others began to set up ventilation equipment. Ricardo and Laura stepped back a little, watching with their hearts in their throats. Anna, fortunately, continued to sleep deeply, oblivious to the unfolding drama. Max, however, was on high alert, his eyes fixed on the house, a slight growl escaping his throat as if he still sensed the threat. It didn't take long. In about 10 minutes, the firefighters emerged carrying Sophia. She was pale, limp, with an oxygen mask already placed on her face. Paramedics rushed to attend to her, placing her on a stretcher and checking her vital signs. "She inhaled a lot of gas, but seems stable," a paramedic informed, as they took her to the ambulance. "We'll take her to the hospital for observation." As Sophia was removed, another officer approached Ricardo and Laura. "Sirs, we need your statements, and about those recordings." "They're on our security system," Ricardo said, pointing to the house. "We can access them from a tablet, or you can check the DVR." Laura, still hugging Max, felt a mixture of relief and deep sadness. Relief that Anna was safe, that they were alive, and sadness at Sophia's betrayal. She looked at Max, who now seemed calmer, leaning his head against her leg. "You're the only one who never deceived us, boy," she whispered, her voice choked. One of the firefighters, a robust man with a tired face, approached. "The leak was controlled. It seems a stove hose was disconnected. We were lucky there wasn't a spark." He looked at Ricardo and Laura, then at Max. "That dog of yours, he's a hero. He smelled it long before you did, didn't he?" Ricardo nodded, a lump in his throat. "Yes. We tried to give him away. We thought he was being aggressive with her." The guilt was an overwhelming weight. The officer who overheard the conversation wrote something in his notepad. "So, the dog's attack was in fact a warning. That changes everything." He looked at the house, where other officers were already beginning to enter, armed with flashlights, for a more thorough investigation. "Sirs, we'll have to cordon off the area for now. The house will be considered a crime scene." Laura felt a chill. Crime scene. The house that was their sanctuary, now stained by theft, betrayal, and a near tragedy. She looked at Anna, who finally began to stir in Ricardo's arms, blinking her confused eyes. "Mommy, Daddy?" Anna asked, her childish, sleepy voice oblivious to the chaos surrounding her. "We're here, my love," Laura replied, extending her hand to touch her daughter's face. "We're okay, thanks to Max." Ricardo held Anna tightly against him, his eyes fixed on Max, who now watched them with unwavering loyalty. The night was far from over, but the truth had emerged from the darkness, and with it, the certainty that an animal's love and instinct could be the purest form of protection. The legal consequences for Sofia would be severe, but for Ricardo and Laura, the greatest lesson was that what one sees is not always the truth, and that trust, once broken, leaves deep scars. The early morning advanced, but time seemed to have stopped for Ricardo and Laura. The house, once a refuge, was now a focal point of flashing lights and official voices. The police officer, a middle-aged man with tired but firm eyes, led them to one of the patrol cars, where they could give their statements with a minimum of privacy. Anna, still sleepy but now more awake, nestled in Laura's lap, her small fingers clutching her mother's shirt. Max, faithfully, lay at Laura's feet, a silent guardian. "Sir and ma'am," the officer began, turning on a small reading light to fill his notepad. "We need the details, from the beginning. What exactly did you see in the recordings?" Ricardo took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts. We were concerned about Max's behavior. He tried to attack Sofia, the caregiver. We thought he was being aggressive, so we decided to review the cameras to understand." He paused, shame and guilt weighing in his voice. "That's when we saw it. Sofia in Anna's room, messing with her things. She took a ring of sentimental value from my wife and, trying to leave quickly, bumped into the stove. The gas hose. It came loose." Laura intervened, her voice choked with emotion. She didn't realize. She continued as if nothing had happened. "And Max? He was trying to warn us the whole time. He smelled the gas, but we didn't. We reprimanded him. Ricardo even thought about giving him away." Tears flowed again, hot and bitter. She hugged Max with force, who responded with a soft whine and a lick of her hand. "He's our hero." The officer nodded, writing everything down. "Understood. So, the dog reacted to the imminent danger, not the caregiver herself. This is crucial. And the recordings? Do they clearly show the theft and the moment of the leak?" "Yes," Ricardo confirmed, his voice firmer now. "Everything. We can access them from my tablet, or you can check the house's DVR. The system is quite comprehensive." As they spoke, Anna, who was curiously watching the activity outside, began to sign to her mother. "What's happening? Why so many lights?" Laura, with a sad smile, used sign language to explain, simplifying as much as possible. "The house has a problem. The firefighters and police are helping, but it's okay, my love. We are safe." Anna, though still a little confused, seemed to accept the explanation, returning to watch the firefighters who were now ventilating the house, the smell of gas gradually diminishing in the cold night air. "The caregiver, Sofia, will be taken to the hospital for observation," the officer informed. "As soon as she's in a condition to be questioned, charges of theft and potentially gross negligence resulting in danger to life will be formalized." Ricardo and Laura exchanged glances. The reality of Sofia's legal consequences was grim, but the feeling of violation and betrayal was even heavier. The woman they had entrusted with their daughter's life had revealed herself to be a thief and narrowly an accidental murderer. "The house will be cordoned off for a few hours for forensics," the officer continued. "You won't be able to enter for now. Do you have somewhere to go?" Ricardo thought quickly. "We can go to my parents' house. It's a few hours from here. Or to a hotel in the nearest town." "I recommend the hotel for now," the officer said. It will be easier for us to communicate for the next steps of the investigation. We'll contact you in the morning to formally collect the video and your full statements. The night was far from over, but the immediate urgency had passed. The gas danger had been contained, Sophia was being attended to, and the investigation was underway. But for Ricardo and Laura, the wound was deep. The house, which should have been a sanctuary, had been desecrated. Trust, once broken, would leave scars that time would hardly erase. They looked at Max, who now rested his head on Laura's leg, his eyes half closed. He had been the only one to see, the only one to warn, and they, in their blindness, had almost abandoned him. The guilt was a heavy burden, but the gratitude was even greater. Max was not just a therapy dog. He was the embodiment of unconditional love and loyalty, a true guardian angel. From that moment on, they knew their lives and Anna's would never be the same. The decision to go to a hotel was made with weary resignation. Ricardo, with Anna still asleep in his arms, while Laura held Max by the leash, said goodbye to the officer. The promise of contact in the morning to formalize statements and hand over video evidence hung in the air, as a reminder that the night of terror was only beginning to unfold its legal consequences. The family car, which had been parked a little further away, awaited them. The drive to the nearest town, about 40 minutes away, was a heavy silence, punctuated only by the soft purr of the engine and Laura's occasional sighs. Anna, exhausted, slept deeply in the back seat, her head resting on Max's shoulder, who in turn seemed vigilant even in repose. Ricardo drove with his hands gripping the steering wheel, his mind in a whirlwind. Each curve on the dark road seemed to lead him deeper into a labyrinth of guilt and relief. Upon arriving at the hotel, a modest establishment on the roadside, the sleepy night receptionist barely looked up as she handed them the keys. The contrast between the banality of the scene and the magnitude of the events they had just experienced was almost surreal. In the elevator, the mirror reflected their pale, tired faces, Laura's swollen eyes, Ricardo's grim expression. Max, with his calm and constant presence, was the only link to the normalcy they had lost. In the room, an impersonal space with 2 double beds and a small table, the first thing they did was lay Anna on one of the beds. She stirred a little, but didn't wake up. Max settled on the floor beside Anna's bed, as he always did, his body forming a protective barrier. "I can't believe it, Laura," he murmured, his voice hoarse, almost inaudible. "I almost gave him away, almost gave Max away." The guilt was a bitter poison in his mouth. "Both of us, Ricardo, both of us. The fault isn't just yours. We were blind. Blinded by our own worry, by our own ignorance, by our fear that he might hurt someone." She looked at Max, who raised his head, his eyes attentive, as if he understood every word. "He was trying to tell us the whole time. He tried to warn us, and we reprimanded him. We punished him for protecting us." Tears flowed again, but this time they were tears of painful relief mixed with shame. Ricardo stood up and went to the window, looking out into the darkness, where the distant city lights flickered indifferently. "And Sophia, to think we trusted her, that we left her alone with Anna. It's a horrible feeling of violation, of betrayal." The image of Laura's ring being stolen, of the carelessness that almost cost his daughter's life, was revolting. "It is," Laura agreed, her voice choked. "But what matters now is that Anna is safe, and Max is our hero. He gave us a second chance." She approached Max, kneeling to stroke his head. "Good boy, Max. My good boy." He was the safe harbor in the midst of the storm. Max responded with a soft whine of contentment, licking Laura's hand. His eyes, once filled with desperate urgency, now shone with unwavering loyalty. Ricardo turned from the window, his expression softer but still marked by exhaustion. I'll never doubt him again. Never. He's more than a therapy dog. He's family. He's our guardian angel. He approached Anna, who was sleeping peacefully, and kissed her forehead. The image of her, so vulnerable, so close to danger, squeezed his heart, but also filled him with immense gratitude for Max. "We need to compose ourselves," Laura said, standing up with a visible effort. "Tomorrow will be a long day. We need to be strong for Anna and for what's to come." They lay down, but sleep didn't come easily. Every noise in the hallway, every shadow dancing on the wall, brought back the image of the gas leaking, the ring being stolen, Max's fury. The country house, once a refuge, was now a nightmare scenario. Trust, once broken, would leave deep scars. Max, sensing his human's restlessness, got up and lay between the two beds, a silent guardian. His presence was a balm, a reminder that despite everything, love and loyalty still existed. The early morning advanced slowly, bringing with it the promise of a new day, but also the certainty that their lives would never be the same. The security they had felt before had been shattered, replaced by constant vigilance and eternal gratitude to their faithful protector. The first ray of morning sun crept through the thin hotel curtains, painting the room with melancholic grey tones. Laura was the first to wake, her body heavy, her mind still caught in the echoes of the nightmare. She turned in bed, feeling the weight of exhaustion and anguish. Beside her, Ricardo slept an uneasy sleep, his face etched with fatigue and pain. In the other bed, Anna rested, oblivious to the storm that had struck her family, and Max was nestled at her feet, a silent and vigilant guardian even in repose. Laura watched her daughter for a long moment, her heart aching. The image of the gas leaking, of the invisible danger, was still vivid in her mind. She reached out and stroked Max's head, who opened his eyes immediately, a gleam of loyalty and attention in his gaze. "Good morning, my hero," she whispered, her voice choked. Ricardo woke with the movement, blinking to adjust to the dim light. His eyes met Laura's, and the same pain, the same guilt, the same silent gratitude was shared between them. "Is she okay?" he asked, his voice hoarse from sleep and emotion. "Yes," Laura replied, a lump in her throat. "She slept all night." Anna began to stir, slowly opening her eyes. She blinked, confused by the strange environment, and then looked at her parents. A small smile appeared on her lips as she saw Max, who was already standing, wagging his tail gently. Anna's innocence, the way she clung to Max's normalcy, was a painful reminder of what they had almost lost. "Mommy, Daddy," she signed, her eyes curious. Laura approached Anna's bed, sitting on the edge. "Good morning, my love. We're in a hotel. We had to leave the house for a while." She tried to keep her voice calm, but the tension was palpable. Ricardo joined them, sitting beside Laura. Ricardo's phone vibrated, making him jump. It was the police officer. He answered, his voice serious. "Good morning, Captain. Yes, we're at the hotel." He listened intently, his expression growing darker. "I understand. Yes, of course. We'll be there as soon as possible." He hung up, his gaze heavy. "We need to go to the police station. Captain Silva wants us to formalize the complaint and hand over the video." Laura and Ricardo looked at each other. The idea of reliving all of it, of having to describe the sordid details of Sophia's betrayal, was exhausting. "I'll go," Ricardo said, his voice firm, though his heart was heavy. "You stay with Anna. She needs you, and Max." "Are you sure?" Laura asked, worried. "You don't have to go alone." "I need to do this, Laura. For Anna. For us. For Max," he replied, determination in his eyes. "I'll take the USB drive with the recordings. It's irrefutable proof." Laura nodded, knowing he was right. "What will happen to her, Ricardo?" she asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. "Sophia." Ricardo pressed his lips together. "She'll pay for what she did," he replied without hesitation. Not just for the theft, but for putting our daughter's life at risk. It's a serious crime, Laura. She didn't just betray us, she almost killed her. The anger, contained for hours, began to bubble up. Max, sensing the rising tension, rubbed his head against Laura's hand, then Ricardo's, a silent reminder of his presence, of his unwavering loyalty. He was the balancing point amidst the emotional chaos. Ricardo stood up, preparing to leave. He put on a shirt and picked up the car keys. Before going, he knelt beside Anna, who was now playing with Max, and kissed her forehead. "I'll be back soon. My love," he signed. Then he stroked Max. "Take care of them, boy," he whispered, his voice laden with a meaning only the two of them understood. Laura, alone with Anna and Max, felt the fragility of life. The country house, which had once been her family's safe haven, was now a scene of danger and betrayal. The future was uncertain, filled with legal and emotional challenges. But one thing was clear: Max was their anchor, the unbreakable bond that had saved them and would keep them united. The journey to justice and healing was just beginning. Ricardo picked up the USB drive from the table, the small metal object feeling heavy in his hand. It was the irrefutable proof, the silent testimony of a betrayal that almost cost his daughter her life. He looked at Laura, who held Anna in her lap, and at Max, lying at the foot of the bed. Their image, together and safe, was what propelled him. "I'll be back as soon as I can," he said, his voice firmer than he felt. He kissed Laura on the forehead, and then Anna, who hugged him tightly. Max, with a soft whine, rubbed his head against his leg, as if offering his unconditional support. The hotel room door closed behind him, and Ricardo felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. The hallway was silent, and the elevator ride down was solitary. Every second felt like an eternity. As he got into the car, the smell of some guest's breakfast lingered in the air, a strange contrast to the seriousness of his mission. He drove through the city that was beginning to wake up, the faint sun illuminating the still empty streets. His mind was on Sophia, on the coldness of her actions, on how she had manipulated their trust. Anger bubbled, but it was a controlled anger, focused on justice. Meanwhile, in the hotel room, Laura tried to stay calm for Anna. "Shall we have breakfast, my love?" she signed, forcing a smile. Anna, still a little sleepy, nodded. Max, always attentive, got up and followed Laura to the small table where there was a coffee pot and some toast. Laura prepared a plate for Anna, observing her eat with an innocence that broke her heart. How to explain to a child the evil that lurks beneath the surface? How to protect her from a world that seemed increasingly dangerous? She looked at Max, who was lying beside Anna, his snout resting on his paws. His brown eyes, so expressive, seemed to reflect the same concern she felt. "You're the best, Max," she whispered, stroking his head, "our guardian angel." He responded with a slight wag of his tail, his loyalty unwavering. Laura felt a mixture of gratitude and shame. Gratitude for Max being so persistent, shame for not having trusted him sooner. Guilt was still a heavy burden, but Max's presence was a balm. Ricardo arrived at the police station, a brick building that looked austere under the morning light. Captain Silva was waiting for him in his office, a man of middle age with a tired but perceptive gaze. "Good morning, Mr. Ricardo," the captain greeted, indicating a chair. "I'm sorry for what happened. Your wife gave me a summary over the phone, but I need the details." Ricardo took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts. "Captain, it's more serious than we imagined. It wasn't just a theft. She put my daughter's life at risk." He handed over the USB drive. The security cameras recorded everything: the theft of the ring and the gas leak. The captain took the USB drive, his expression serious. He called one of his officers to connect the device to a monitor. The room fell silent as the images began to play. Ricardo watched, reviving every moment of anguish. The image of Sophia, distracted, bumping into the portable gas heater, the almost inaudible hissing sound of the gas, Laura's ring being stolen, and then Max's fury, his desperate barks, his attacks on the caregiver, which now seemed like acts of heroism. Captain Silver and the other officer watched with increasingly shocked expressions. The captain's face hardened as he saw Sophia stealing the ring, but it was the gas leak scene that made him press his lips together. "Unbelievable," the officer murmured, his eyes wide. "She didn't even realize what she did. And the dog, he was trying to warn them." Captain Silver turned off the monitor. "Mr. Ricardo, this is extremely serious. It's not just theft. It's criminal negligence that resulted in danger to life. The gas leak, the deaf girl. It's a very grave situation." He looked at Ricardo with new gravity. "We'll issue an arrest warrant immediately. With this evidence, she'll have nowhere to run." Ricardo felt a bitter relief. Justice would be served, but the scar would remain. "Thank you, Captain," he said, his voice choked. "We just want her to pay for what she did, and for Anna to be safe." "She will be," the captain assured. "We'll do everything in our power." Upon leaving the police station, Ricardo felt the weight of responsibility lighten a little, replaced by a sense of exhaustion. Justice was in motion, but the trauma was still fresh. He needed to return to Laura and Anna, to his true safe haven. The legal battle would be long, but they were not alone. Max had proven that. Ricardo drove back to the hotel, the morning sun now stronger, warming the asphalt. The city, previously asleep, buzzed with everyday life, a stark contrast to the emotional storm he had just faced. The weight of the USB drive, now secure in his jacket pocket, seemed to have transferred to his shoulders, but in a different way. It was no longer the weight of uncertainty and guilt, but that of exhaustion and the gravity of what was to come. Justice would be served, yes, but the image of Anna, so vulnerable, so close to danger, was a wound that would take time to heal. He thought of Max, of the dog's pure and unwavering instinct. How could they have doubted him? Shame still burned him, but it was overcome by immense gratitude. Max was not just a therapy dog. He was a family member, a guardian, a silent hero. That thought brought a faint smile to his lips, the first in many hours. They owed him everything. Upon arriving at the hotel, Ricardo took the elevator up, feeling a renewed urgency. He wanted to see Laura and Anna, to hug them, to feel that they were truly safe. The room door opened, and the scene he found calmed his heart. Laura was sitting at the table, reading a book to Anna, who watched her attentively, her eyes shining. Max was lying at the foot of the bed, but lifted his head the instant Ricardo entered, a slight wag of his tail greeting him. Laura looked up, and the relief on her face was palpable. "Ricardo!" she signed, a sigh escaping her lips. Anna turned, a wide smile spreading as she saw him. She ran into his arms, and Ricardo hugged her tightly, kissing the top of her head. "My love," he whispered, his voice choked. He held her for a moment, feeling the warmth of her small body, the beat of her heart. It was a vivid reminder of what they had almost lost. Laura approached, and he hugged her too, Anna still nestled between them. "So?" she signed, concern still visible in her eyes. Ricardo let out a heavy sigh, but with a touch of resolution. "Captain Silver is going to issue an arrest warrant immediately. With the recordings, there's no way she can deny it. It's criminal negligence, Laura, not just theft." Laura closed her eyes for an instant, a tremor running through her body. "Thank God," she signed, her voice also a little shaky. I still can't believe she would do something like that, and that we didn't realize." "No one could have predicted it," Ricardo replied, stroking Anna's hair. She deceived us. But the important thing is that Anna is safe, and that Max saved us. Max, as if understanding his name, got up and came to them, rubbing his snout against Ricardo's leg. Ricardo bent down, hugging the dog with profound gratitude. "You're the best boy, Max," he said, his voice hoarse. "Our hero." Max responded with a soft whine and a more vigorous tail wag. Anna, sensing the seriousness on her parents' faces, but also the calm that was beginning to settle, looked at Max and then at them. "Max good?" she signed, with the innocence of a child who didn't understand the extent of the danger. Laura smiled, a genuine smile this time. "Yes, my love. Max is very good. The best." The family sat on the bed, Max nestled at Anna's feet. The silence of the room was filled with a new sense of security, but also by the shadow of what had happened. "The legal battle will be long," Ricardo said, looking at Laura. "But at least now we have the evidence, and we know the truth. And we have each other," Laura signed, taking his hand. "And Max." Ricardo nodded, squeezing her hand. The country house, the place that should have been their refuge, now carried the memories of a nightmare. They would have to deal with it, rebuild trust, but not alone. That moment, there in the hotel room, with Anna safe in their arms and Max vigilant, was the beginning of their recovery. Justice was in motion, and the family, though scarred, was united and stronger than ever, with their four-legged guardian angel by their side.